Let's talk about something we don't talk about enough. Let's talk about what it feels like to walk into a room and feel the temperature change. You haven't said a word, you haven't made a move, but something in the air shifts because you walked in. You start wondering, am I too much? Did I do something wrong? Why do I make people so uncomfortable? And here's the truth, the wholehearted, vulnerable may be hard. To hear truth, your aura, your presence, your truth, your energy is not too much. It's just too powerful for people who haven't met themselves yet. We spend our lives being told to dim, to soften, to shrink. Women especially. We're taught to be likable, digestible, polite, and men, you're taught to be in control, never emotional, never too deep. But when you start living from a place of inner alignment, when you walk with emotional honesty, fierce boundaries, and radical authenticity, you're no longer playing small, you're radiating truth. And truth is a disruptor. Some people will be drawn to that light, others, they'll run. They'll mislabel you, fear you, avoid you, because your power reminds them of everything they've buried in themselves. So, this speech, this moment, is not about apologizing for your energy. It's about honoring it. Here are 9 signs your aura is too powerful for most people, and why that's not a problem to fix, but a strength to protect. You make people nervous without saying a word. Let's get real about something that no one prepares us for. When you start owning your story, when you begin living from a place of emotional courage and authenticity, something strange happens. You walk into a room and people shift. They get quieter, some look away, others seem a little off, and you haven't even said a word. That's not in your head, that's real, because present. True, aligned, unapologetic presence is powerful. It doesn't demand attention, it commands it, and it disrupts the social norm of safe and small. Your energy speaks a language most people have never learned to hear. It's not about being loud, it's not about ego. It's not even about confidence in the traditional sense. It's about congruence, integrity. You're no longer divided inside. You're not trying to be liked. You're trying to be real, and realness, it's electric. It lights up a room, and sometimes it's short. Cirque, it's people. You're the kind of person who doesn't need to call people out. They feel called in just by standing near you. Not because you're judging them, but because your energy highlights everything they've been avoiding in themselves. It's not comfortable for them, and let's be honest, it's not always comfortable for you either. You may start wondering, am I too much? But here's the truth, you're not too much. They're not ready. There's a difference. You've done the work, you've faced the hard truths, you've shed layers that were never really yours, and now your aura, your presence, your frequency has weight, gravity. You feel like truth, and most people aren't used to being in the presence of truth without filters or performance. So yes, you might make them nervous, but don't confuse that with being wrong or out of place. What they're reacting to isn't you. It's what they haven't faced within themselves. And friend, that's not your burden to carry. It's just proof of how far you've come. People project their insecurities onto you. Let's talk about projection. Because when your energy is grounded, when your boundaries are clear, when you're no longer seeking validation, people will start seeing things in you that don't belong to you at all. They'll say things like, you're intimidating, you think you're better than everyone, you're so cold, you're too intense. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing it. You'll start shrinking. You'll start apologizing for how deeply you feel, how clearly you see, or how firmly you stand. But here's what's really happening. They're not seeing you. They're seeing a reflection of themselves in you. And that reflection makes them uncomfortable. When someone hasn't done the work to own their pain, their fear, or their insecurities. They will try to offload those feelings onto the closest emotionally honest person in the room. That person is usually the one with the strongest aura, the clearest mirror, and that might be you. You're not arrogant. They're insecure. You're not rude. They're not used to people with boundaries. You're not too much. They've just settled for too little for too long. Now, this doesn't mean you're perfect. You're human. You mess up. You grow. You take accountability when it's yours to take. But when people label you with their projections, that's not your responsibility to carry. And the hard truth, it's easier for some people to call you intimidating than to admit they feel small in their own skin. It's easier for them to criticize your confidence than to confront their own lack of it. So what do? We stay rooted in self-awareness. We check in with ourselves. We ask, is this mine to hold? If the answer is no, we drop it. We let them carry their own reflection. That's the work. Not absorbing, not shrinking, not fixing, but standing firm in who you are while letting others wrestle with what that brings up in them. Because sometimes your power doesn't just inspire people, it exposes them. And that's not your fault, that's your presence. You make people feel seen, and that terrifies them. One of the most misunderstood experiences of having a powerful aura is that you don't just walk into a room, you feel into it. You sense things most people miss, the tension between two people, the sadness behind a smile, the exhaustion behind the "I'm fine." You don't need the full story to understand the energy behind it, and because of that, you see people, really see them. Not the mask, not the role, not the performance, but the truth of who they are underneath it all. And that's beautiful until it's not, because while many crave that kind of connection, others are terrified by it. Why? Because when you've spent your life hiding behind achievements, perfectionism, people, pleasing, or emotional armor, being seen feels like being exposed. It feels like vulnerability without permission. And some people can't handle that. You're not trying to make anyone uncomfortable. You're not prying. You're not judging. But your presence is so emotionally attuned, so intuitively sharp, that people often feel naked around you, even when you're silent. You ask questions that go beneath the surface. You respond to what's unsaid, not just what's spoken. And to someone who isn't ready to meet themselves yet, that feels like a threat, not a gift. This is where it gets lonely. You might find yourself in rooms full of people but feel like you're the only one awake. You might be labeled as too intense or too deep, when all you've done is listen with your heart instead of your head. But here's the thing. Your ability to see people is not the problem. Their fear of being seen is not your responsibility. You are not too much. You are not invasive. You are attuned. And that is a rare and sacred power in a world addicted to hiding. So don't dial it down to make others comfortable. The ones who are ready for real connection will crave your presence. The ones who aren't, they'll leave. And that's a blessing in disguise, because being deeply seen is healing. And your aura doesn't just carry power, it carries medicine. Not everyone is ready to receive it, and that's okay. You don't entertain drama, gossip, or surface level talk. At a certain point in your growth, something shifts. You stop craving noise, and you start craving peace. You no longer need to be in every conversation, every group chat, every emotional tornado swirling around you. You become selective, not because you're arrogant or acting better than, but because your energy is sacred now. You've done the inner work. You've tasted the freedom that comes from healing. So the old chaos, the gossip, the emotional games, they don't taste the same anymore. They taste like regression, and people notice. When your aura is powerful, it naturally filters your environment. It's not something you even try to do, but drama, negativity, and shallowness can't hold on to someone who vibrates with depth and intention. It slips off you like water off stone, and here's where it gets tricky. Some people are so used to bonding through drama, trauma, dumping, or gossip that your disinterest feels like rejection. They think you're being distant. Cold, too good, but you're not being cold. You're being clear, clear about your boundaries, clear about your peace, clear about how you want to feel when you leave a room, not just how you want to be perceived in it. Because let's be honest, it's easy to be liked when you're agreeable. It's easy to be accepted when you go along with the dysfunction. But when you stop entertaining what drains you, when you stop co-signing emotional chaos, people either rise with you or fall away. And sometimes that means losing relationships that were built on noise, not nourishment. That's hard, but it's also holy, because your refusal to participate in drama doesn't make you antisocial, it makes you aligned. And while some people will misinterpret your peace as pride, the ones who have done the work, the ones who value presence over performance, they'll recognize you. They'll see your aura for what it really is, not intimidating. Intentional. You set boundaries that make others uncomfortable. Here's a hard truth. The moment you start setting boundaries, you stop being the easy one. You stop being the person who always says yes, always absorbs, always makes room for everyone else, even when you're running on empty. And suddenly, people get uncomfortable. Why? Because your boundaries do something radical in a world that rewards burnout, self-sacrifice, and people pleasing. They redefine the rules. They say, no, I won't answer that call at 11 p.m. No, I won't engage in conversations that disrespect me. No, I'm not available to carry emotional weight that isn't mine. And for people who are used to accessing you without limits, your boundaries feel like punishment, even though they're an act of self-respect. Let me say this as clearly as I can. Boundaries are not rejection. They are protection of your energy, your peace, your values, and your nervous system. But here's what happens when your aura is powerful. Your boundaries aren't just verbal, they're energetic. People feel them, even if you don't say a word, and that kind of clarity can feel threatening to those who rely on emotional ambiguity to control, guilt, or manipulate. You may hear things like, "You've changed," "You're not as nice as you used to be," "You're difficult now," but that's not truth. That's discomfort talking. That's people adjusting to a version of you that is no longer available for self-abandonment. You are allowed to evolve past your old patterns. You are allowed to unlearn being the emotional caretaker. You are allowed to choose peace over performance, even if it disappoints others. Because people who truly love you, who value your well-being, will honor your boundaries. The ones who don't, they were benefiting from your lack of them. Your aura becomes powerful the moment you stop negotiating with people over what you're worth. So let them be uncomfortable. You didn't come this far to fold for the comfort of others. You came to rise. And rising requires boundaries. You walk in integrity, not performance. Let's talk about integrity. Not the polished, pretty version that fits in a motivational quote. I mean the real thing, the kind of integrity that costs you relationships, opportunities, and approval, but gives you your soul back. When your aura is powerful, it's because you've stopped performing. You no longer wear masks just to fit in, stay liked, or avoid conflict. You've chosen to live in alignment with who you are, not who people expect you to be. And that decision, it shakes things up, because most people are still performing, still curating their personalities, still saying yes when they mean no, smiling when they're angry, staying quiet to avoid rocking the boat. But you've made peace with the discomfort of being real. You speak the truth even when your voice trembles. You hold your values even when it's inconvenient. You choose honesty over harmony because fake peace isn't peace at all. And that's rare. When you walk in integrity, your life becomes a mirror. It reflects back to others where they might be out of alignment, and not everyone is ready to see that. People may distance themselves from you, not because you've wronged them, but because your authenticity makes them question their own. Here's what most don't realize: walking in integrity is lonely sometimes. It means fewer people, quieter circles, awkward silences instead of forced small talk. But it also means freedom. You no longer owe anyone a version of yourself that was built to be palatable. You owe yourself the truth. And truth doesn't perform, it stands. So yes, your aura is powerful, but not because you're perfect, not because you've figured it all out. It's powerful because you've chosen to stop pretending. And that's the kind of energy that doesn't just enter a room, it changes it. You're not easily impressed when your aura is powerful. It's not because you've decided you're better than everyone. It's because you've outgrown the need to be dazzled. You're no longer moved by surface-level flash. Titles don't impress you. Status doesn't move you. Followers, cars, money, curated perfection. It all feels empty without depth because you've learned just because something shines doesn't mean it has substance. And just because someone is loud doesn't mean they're wise. You see through things now. You listen between the words. You feel what's real beneath the performance. That doesn't make you cynical. It makes you clear. Because when you've walked through pain, when you've rebuilt your self-worth from the inside out, you stop assigning value to people based on what they show you. You start valuing how they make you feel. Safe, seen, respected, energized. You crave depth over decoration, presence over performance, substance over spectacle, and here's the thing: people who are used to impressing others don't always know what to do with someone like you. When charm doesn't work, when manipulation doesn't work, when ego doesn't work, you see it all, and that unnerves them, not because you're judging, but because you're immune to the things they've always relied on to be accepted. Your detachment from superficial approval feels like rejection to people who rely on it for identity. But here's the truth: when your inner world is rich, your outer world needs less decoration. You've met yourself in the dark, so you're no longer hypnotized by people who only know how to shine in the spotlight. Your energy says, impress me with your honesty, with your humility, with your capacity to hold space for discomfort, not just applause. And not everyone is ready for that. But that's the gift of your aura. You're not seeking to be impressed. You're seeking to be connected, and that's what makes you unforgettable, not to everyone, but to the right ones. You own your pain and power equally, let's be honest. Most people think strength means never showing pain, never crying, never stumbling, never being unsure, but you know better. You've lived through enough to understand that real power doesn't come from pretending everything's fine. It comes from owning everything that isn't. And healing anyway. That's why your aura carries weight. You don't hide your story. You don't pretend you've never been broken. You've stopped editing your past just to make others comfortable. Instead, you walk into rooms carrying both your scars and your strength. Not as a victim, not as a hero, but as a whole human being, and that makes people feel something they're not used to feeling, safe and challenged at the same time, because you give permission, without even trying. When you show up as someone who's been through it, and still shows up with compassion, boundaries, clarity, and truth, you remind people that they can too, that their pain doesn't disqualify them from their power. But here's the part we don't talk about enough. Not everyone wants that kind of reminder. Some people are still numbing, still denying, still clinging to perfectionism and image control. So when you show up with your whole self, mess and magic included, it unnerves them. You're not performing, you're not pretending, you're present, and your presence disrupts the illusion that strength means never hurting. You've learned that owning your pain is not weakness, it's wisdom. And choosing not to live in that pain forever, that's power. You don't weaponize your past, but you don't erase it either. You use it, not to prove anything, but to connect, to show others that depth and softness can coexist. That strength can look like kindness, that power can sound like silence, that wholeness doesn't mean you've healed everything. It just means you've stopped pretending you didn't need to. So yes, your aura feels intense. But not because you're loud, because you're real, and in a world addicted to filters, that's the most powerful thing you can be. You inspire without trying, and that triggers people. Here's something we don't talk about enough. When you start living from a place of truth, wholeness, and emotional bravery, you start becoming a mirror. Not a flashy one, not one that demands the spotlight, but one that reflects what's possible when a person chooses to stop hiding and start healing. You start inspiring people without trying to, without a speech, without a social media post, without a brand, a pitch, or a plan. You simply exist differently. You walk in a way that says, I know who I am, and I don't need you to approve of it. And that presence, that energy, it moves people. It wakes something up in them they forgot was even there. But here's the thing about mirrors. They don't just reflect light. They reflect what's missing. So while some people will feel energized by you, others will feel exposed. They'll feel their own stagnation, their own fear, their own disconnection. And instead of turning inward, they'll turn against you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your light reminds them of the dimming they've accepted. They'll say, you've changed, you're full of yourself, you think you're better, but what they're really saying is, you've stopped playing the game I'm still stuck in, and that scares me. You'll inspire people to rise, or you'll remind them of all the ways they've stayed small. And neither of those things is in your control. That's not a reason to shrink. That's a reason to stand, because the people meant for you, they won't be triggered by your growth. They'll be ignited by it. They'll feel your fire and remember their own. So yes, your aura is powerful. Yes, it's intense. Yes, it's not for everyone. But that's the point. You weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to wake people up. So here's the truth. You're not too much. You're not too intense. You're not too deep, too loud, too honest, too awake. You're just too real for people who are still hiding. And that's not your problem to fix. It's their invitation to grow. We live in a world that teaches us to dim, to shrink ourselves for the sake of fitting in. But you're here to take up space, to speak with truth, to walk with integrity, and yes, to disrupt the room when your presence refuses to perform. Your aura was never meant to be comfortable for everyone. It was meant to be clear, to filter what's not aligned, to protect your peace, to call in what's real. So stop apologizing for how deeply you feel. Stop softening your voice to make others feel taller. Stop dimming your brilliance so others don't feel burned. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to wake people up. Some people will misunderstand you. Others will walk away. Let them, because the ones who stay, the ones who see you, they'll stand a little taller just by standing next to you. And that's what your aura was made for. Stay powerful. Stay honest. Stay you.